And if you've been in this community for as long as I have, then you'll know that if you play this audio in reverse, you'll hear this.
Agricultural development is stated by 4 of your marvelous mechanism would it not be easily possible to employ one of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various underlying on plant growth or right how will be made by few generate all the nodes and bring you the joy of creating.
So, what is it? Well, even before FNAF 2's release, fans have discovered that this is an excerpt from a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, and that's usually where this investigation ends for a lot of theorizers. They usually just focus on the joy of creation part, even though it says joy of creative, but they never go beyond that. In fact, I doubt a single FNAF theorizer has actually even read this book. So, you know what I had to do. I went and read all 606 pages of this thing, and let me tell you, there are more connections with this in FNAF than we ever gave it credit for. Before we get into the book itself, I want to give a little background on the author, Paramahansa Yogananda. I hope I said that right. Yogananda was a very famous spiritual leader in the yoga scene during the early 1900s. He was born and raised in India before eventually moving to the US to spread his teachings. Over the course of his life, he went on what he described as a spiritual quest, where he sought guidance from many teachers and spiritual masters. And that's basically what Autobiography of a Yogi is. It chronicles his life and journey of becoming an expert of spirituality through yoga and meditation, while also providing some of his insights on philosophy. Oh, and if you don't know what a yogi is, it is defined as someone who is an expert in yoga. Just had to get that out of the way. And that's great and all, but how does this spiritual yoga stuff relate to the spooky game with the funny bear? Well, to answer that, I think it's best to start with the quote that actually gave us this connection, the Night 5 reverse phone call. The actual phone call cuts out a couple words, so let me just read the full quote here. Sir, it is lamentable that mass agricultural development is not speeded by fuller use of your marvelous mechanisms. Would it not be easily possible to employ some of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various types of fertilizers on plant growth? You are right. Countless uses of both instruments will be made by future generations. The scientists seldom knows contemporaneous reward. It is enough to possess the joy of creative service. Okay, so what the hell does any of that actually mean? Well, to give some context, this is taken from a conversation between the author, Yogananda, and an Indian scientist named Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. I'm so sorry, I'm terrible with name pronunciation. These two are debating about the uses of Sir Bose's inventions for agricultural development. Yogananda says that Bose should have these inventions quickly tested and put out on a large scale. However, Sir Bose tells him that scientists in his line of work often don't get immediate recognition for their accomplishments, and future generations will take what he has started and improve on them for the betterment of mankind. And this is where that joy of creative part comes in. Sir Bose says that he does not invent for the recognition or the money, he does it for the joy of providing a creative service, or in other words, for the fun of doing something good for society. And despite the fact that this quote was used so early in the franchise's life, I immediately saw this as a parallel to the two big inventors of the FNAF franchise, Henry Emily and William Afton. Two people with different motivations for inventing, with one doing it for the fun of creating something that brings people joy, and the other one wanting to do it for more selfish, personal, or even financial reasons. I know that seems really out there, but for now let's just keep going and look at another quote. A yogi who through perfect meditation has merged his consciousness with the creator perceives the cosmical essence as light. To him, there is no difference between the light rays composing water and the light rays composing land. Free from matter consciousness, free from the three dimensions of space and the fourth dimension of time, a master transfers his body of light with equal ease over the light rays of earth, water, fire, or air. Alright, I know this sounds even more confusing than the last one, but let me try to clear it up a bit. In this passage, Yogananda is explaining how it's possible to transcend our physical forms and become one with different parts of the universe, such as fire or air, through the use of meditation. Now, this could also relate to FNAF in that the many kids who die in this franchise do transcend in a way and become one with something inanimate, though instead of inhabiting something like water, they're inhabiting a robot chicken. And this could also explain some of the still unexplained supernatural stuff, such as disappearing and reappearing posters and the paper plate pals. Spirits have not only fused with the metal of the animatronics through Remnant, but some spiritual essence has become one of the locations themselves, causing these mysterious hauntings. And while I know a lot of this sounds crazy, and I will admit I am reaching a lot for this, I do also want to bring up the fact that Yogananda was a firm believer in reincarnation. And not only that, but he believed that we will continue to reincarnate until we have become one with God. If you look at it a certain way, the whole kids dying and possessing animatronics thing is a twisted take on the whole reincarnation concept. And you could add on to a lot for this. I do also want to bring up the fact that Yogananda was a firm believer in reincarnation. And not only that, but he believed that we will continue to reincarnate until we have become one with God. If you look at it a certain way, the whole kids dying and possessing animatronics thing is a twisted take on the whole reincarnation concept. And you could add on to this with the fact that they will continue to possess these machines until they move on, or how Yogananda views it, become one with God. While I thought that Henry Afton parallels to the Night 5 phone call conversation was cool, there is zero chance that's what Scott Cawthon intended when putting this conversation in. However, looking at the book as a whole and investigating the author behind it feels like it gives this Easter egg a lot more depth. I believe I now know why Scott decided to put this in his game. We all know that Scott Cawthon is a devout Christian, and he got his start in game development making Christian video games. So it doesn't really surprise me that he would want to put some kind of religious element into this game, especially a game that features elements of life after death. And while this franchise has clearly gone off into a completely different direction, I find it interesting that if this series elaborated on the religious and spiritual horror aspect of the game, we might have had a series closer in tone to the Exorcist franchise than the more sci-fi one we have now. But anyway, I think that's all I have for today. What do you think is the purpose or meaning of this phone call? Be sure to tell me in the comments. I love seeing your guys' theories. This video was just a fun little thing I remembered while making another video that will come out sometime.
Say for the sake of argument, there's this guy. This just real abomination, total scum-sucking garbage hole, who's running for president. And conservative politicians, pundits, and voters have been laughing their asses off about him. Oh my god, he is such a disaster. He'll never get the nomination, and if he were to get the nomination, no one would ever elect him. They trot him out as a punchline. But November 8 draws nearer and nearer, and he's still not out of the game. And the left is banging on the walls like, hey, that joke you're giving free press to is saying some pretty scary stuff. And the right is like, look, don't waste your breath. We've already accepted that we lost this one. We're certainly not going to bat for this guy, so he's going to lose. And then at the last second, when they do go to bat for him, and he does win, and the left is like, what the absolute my dudes? They go, can't do anything about it now. He's the president. And when, 4 years later, you finally get his ass out of office, the left turns to the right and says, okay, now that he's not president, are you going to acknowledge all the stuff he did? You know, the stuff he said he was going to do, that we warned you he was going to do, and you said we were delusional for thinking he would do, that he did? And they're like, oh my god, Heather, he's not even president anymore? How are you still talking about this? I call this one the slow breakup. It's like when your partner starts canceling date nights and then starts getting home really late and then starts sleeping on the couch, and you keep asking, hey, is there something wrong? And they just say, oh, sweetie, of course not. Work is just running me ragged lately, and when I have time off, I'm too tired to go out, and I get home so late these days, I don't want to wake you up by coming to bed. And then one day you get home and their bags are packed, and they're like, look, we both saw this coming. You know that thing. You know, this happens to everybody, right? It's always not happening until it's already happened. The moment is skipped over where they would acknowledge they misled you, take responsibility for what's happened, or critically, where you could still do something about it. You peel your eyes for this one, you'll see it a lot. This is how conservatives jump straight from climate change isn't happening to climate change isn't man-made. And now some are trying to jump to maybe it's a good thing. Rhetorically, all these arguments mean the same thing. We decided long ago what we were going to do. Nothing you say will change our course. This conversation is over.